we're presenting the fourth episode on this idea of critical thinking in the curriculum, as has been advocated, suggested, promoted, encouraged in the National Education Policy 2020 as well as the National Curriculum Framework 2023, which is a draft, but it's soon going to become the final document. This episode is going to take us through what are some of the strategies that we might be able to employ when we want to assess critical thinking. So now we have come to the assessment part. Our earlier episodes gave ideas about how can we bring critical thinking in the curriculum. हम उसको गणित में कैसे ला सकते हैं, सोशल स्टडीज में कैसे ला सकते हैं, जनरल अवेयरनेस में कैसे ला सकते हैं, and language as well. And we gave many examples from all these subjects that children go through in school. This episode now takes us through how do we finally really assess critical thinking, or for that matter, any higher order thinking skill. Here in this episode, the focus is on critical thinking. What we need to focus on is how will the students think for answering this question. Not what to think, but how to think. That's been the thrust all along since the NEP 2020. So therefore, before we even go to the assessment, the classroom discussion should take the students and make the students think, not just recall and regurgitate what they already have learned. That's the shift this beautiful policy document as well as the framework is encouraging us to make. We need to therefore get the students into the habit of solving problem. Problem मतलब गणित के problems नहीं, उस तरह के problems जिंदगी में आते ही नहीं है. Life problems. And therefore critical thinking जो है, उसके लिए हमें कुछ real life का मुद्दा लेना चाहिए हमारे क्लास में, and उसके साथ बच्चों को thinking की आदत डालनी चाहिए during teaching, and only then can you hope to do any kind of an assessment there. Again, higher order thinking, including critical thinking, can be done at all levels: foundational, primary, preparatory, middle, as well as secondary. All stages, 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, हर stage पे हम critical thinking कर सकते हैं और उसका assessment भी कर सकते हैं. I have taken one example for this episode, an interesting one, a new one, something which might hook you, जो बच्चों को भी अच्छा लगेगा, especially जो adolescent बच्चे हैं. मान लीजिए न्यूज़पेपर में एक आर्टिकल आया ब्यूटी पैजेंट के बारे में. Okay, so we are now debating a beauty pageant. Now, before we do that, the task should be like this. Before we even get to the assessment, this is a suggested task that we need to create in our class in a collaborative manner. काफी बच्चों को इकट्ठा इस पे काम करने को हम मजबूर करें तो बढ़िया critical thinking होगी. Now, first of all, the students have to be able to think about this idea about a beauty pageant कि ये सही है या सही नहीं है. इस तरह के competitions beauty के होने चाहिए या नहीं होने चाहिए. Before this, they have to examine many assumptions that society has. They have to exercise a fair-mindedness. हमने आपको पहले episode of critical thinking में बताया था कि when we practice critical thinking in daily life, it leads to a fair-mindedness in our behavior everywhere in all walks of life. So how do we exercise a fair-mindedness in this debate? फिर बाद में हर एक तरह के issues जो wide range के issues हैं उनको evaluate करना सिखाएं हम बच्चों को, and the teacher is always a guide. So we are now examining a beauty pageant. I like this image of Manushi Chiller, so I took that. We are examining this idea of a beauty pageant. Steps that we need to follow in the class. हो सकता है कि न्यूज़पेपर में या न्यूज़ में कहीं पे भी हमें एक कोई लेख मिल जाए. We might find an article which is very close to the student's life, especially adolescents. For example, कुछ लोगों ने आके एक ब्यूटी पैजेंट का चल रहा था अच्छा खासा प्रोग्राम, उसको डिस्टर्ब कर दिया. ये होता रहता है, दंगे होते रहते हैं. And we have found this article that somebody has disrupted a beauty pageant which was going on. Now this is inflammatory. इसमें तो भड़क जाएंगे बच्चे भी and जनता भी, and it's controversial enough to engage a student's attention, especially those who are in the adolescent age. Now, there can be 2 points of view for discussion. पहले हम ये क्लास में कर रहे हैं, we are discussing this before we even get into the assessment part. We are discussing the task first. There can be 2 points of view for discussion in this. One view can easily and clearly be that such pageants, ये जो beauty pageants होते हैं, beauty competitions होते हैं, they are very demeaning to women. मतलब सभी औरतें खूबसूरत होती हैं किसी न किसी तरीके से, and कुछ लोगों को चुनना is basically an insult to women because they also have to undergo a lot of body changes. They have to starve, they have to become thin, etc., etc. And some unnatural change of appearance might be also done. तो एक तो ये point of view हो सकता है. Second point of view could also be कि इस तरह से किसी ने यदि disturb कर दिया, so this can actually hurt hard-working contestants. Whoever is trying to enter this beauty pageant has been working for it for many years to get to that stage, to the finalist stage. As we know, all competitions need a lot of hard work, whether it is sports, beauty pageants, anything else that we want to enter in. And therefore, इस तरह से किया तो उनके dreams might get shattered and even the organizers can lose money. So we've got 2 points of view which are going on as a discussion in the class. What happens therefore? We get 2 questions to explore. From that discussion, we have to first draw out 2 questions. इस तरह से आप कोई भी issue ले सकते हो. I have taken beauty pageant for this episode, but we can actually discuss many other issues, general awareness issues, and raise the bar of thinking in the class, allow everybody to be thinking critically. एक सवाल ये हो सकता है कि do pageants hurt all the women? सभी औरतों को तकलीफ है क्या? If you are doing pageants, all right. Second question can be, is it justified to disrupt the pageant? क्या ये सही है? क्या इसको माफी है? Then आप जाओ और किसी का भी disturb कर दो. So now we have 2 questions. What would you do in the class next? I would recommend sending the students for group work, collaborative work in the library or maybe a Google search or whatever is convenient for you. Here collaboration is happening. You're forming groups, you're sending them to the library to research on these 2 questions now. That have pageants always hurt all women? And is it justified to disrupt pageants? ये 2 सवाल बच्चों में अब हैं and they are grappling with this. Please note that while they're discussing this, critical thinking is ongoing all the time. Because they are actually looking at points of view. Does it hurt? Does it not hurt? Is it justified? Is it not justified? So critical thinking is already in progress. Now here is an important tip from Shikshanga. When you are at this stage, don't send your students to the library with an opinion already formed. ऐसे मत कीजिए कि अच्छा this group is now going to discuss, yes it is just not justified to disrupt. This group is going to discuss, no, pageants don't hurt all the women. If you have already formed a view, तो फिर वो क्या पढ़ेंगे? फिर what critical thinking will happen? Send them with an open mind. Just choose a topic you want to discuss or choose one out of this and go and look at both points of view, not that which you already want to defend या आपने already अपना मन बांध लिया है. After they come back, now we are getting into the assessment. Okay? Now we are getting into the assessment. तो अब हम क्या करेंगे? Debate होगी. You know, so students will argue on both sides of the argument. Whichever question they have chosen, both sides of the argument. I want to repeat here. Argue convincingly on both sides of the argument. जो पढ़ के आए हैं उसको repeat नहीं करना है premises. Right? And how do you assess? This is very important. We must remember as teachers that we are actually going to be looking at the way they present their argument, how are they thinking, critical thinking evidence है क्या, दोनों तरफ से सोच रहे हैं क्या, do they now have they come to a conviction that I think this is my view after I have read a lot. यहाँ पे हमारा अपना personal bias बिल्कुल नहीं आना चाहिए. Teacher doesn't take sides by, okay, actually I agree with this, that beauty pageants hurt all women. No, we are not going to judge who is winning and who is losing here. We are assessing critical thinking. Did they go through the exercise of critical thought or not? Were they able to point out both points of view or not? Because, क्यों? Because critical thinking जो है, उसमें एक नियम है that students or adults also, we need to enter both points of view. दोनों तरफ के विचारों की हमको जांच पड़ताल करनी चाहिए. That is critical thinking. After we do that, we can form our own value judgment and that's fine. But not before we have actually examined both points of view. What are the strong and the weak arguments on both sides? This is the way fair-mindedness will happen in life. कोई भी मुद्दा हमारे सामने जिंदगी में आए, हमको उसको दोनों तरफ से जांच पड़ताल करनी चाहिए, and only then will we be called rational individuals, critical thinking individuals, and so on. So this was one example of how to actually first build critical thinking in the class, and उसके बाद उसका assessment कैसे होगा. How does something qualify as critical thinking assessment? Number one, जो भी task आप choose करें, जिंदगी से निगड़ित हो. In the sense, let it be connected with the real world problems and challenges. जैसे हमने एक ये problem लिया, beauty pageant को disrupt कर रहे हैं लोग. Okay. Second, students should be able to apply higher order thinking skills to perform the task, like we have just seen in the example. Third, if possible, make sure there is scope for collaboration, communication between a group of students in the class, between the teacher and the students, some feedback, and so on. Then, it qualifies as a critical thinking assessment when you give the students an opportunity कि अब आप खुद सोचो, थोड़ा आत्मबोध हो जाए, स्वाध्याय, self reflection करेंगे हम, and we'll talk to each other and there will be peer learning to see how did we do this task, could we have improved our point of view, थोड़ा और पढ़ा होता तो would we have been better in our presentation, and so on. And lastly, critical thinking assessment, like any other assessment, should serve two purposes. Number one, of course, it's a vehicle for assessment. Second, it should become a vehicle for my own learning and growth, because I'm getting feedback and I'm growing and I'm learning. Thank you for watching. This was our episode on how do you do assessment of critical thinking. Do like, share, forward. Do subscribe to our channel if you find it worth your while. Thank you very much.